How do we know when American foreign policy succeeds? Is it when sanctions bite, when allies fall in line, when adversaries back down, or are we measuring the wrong things entirely? What if we're measuring the wrong things entirely? The metrics we use to judge foreign policy success are almost entirely short-term. Did the pressure work? Did we get the outcome we wanted? Did we demonstrate strength? But every foreign policy action creates a secondary effect that doesn't show up in headlines for years, sometimes decades. The media focuses on immediate results because that's what generates attention. Sanctions imposed, bases established, agreements signed. These are concrete, measurable, and they happen on news cycles that people can follow. What doesn't make headlines is the quiet recalculation happening in capitals around the world. Every time America leverages its economic and financial dominance to achieve political goals, other nations take notes. Not just our adversaries, our partners too. They're learning that deep integration with American systems comes with political risks that previous generations of leaders never had to consider. The response isn't ideological opposition to America. It's practical hedging against dependency. Countries are building alternatives, not because they want to challenge us, but because they want options. Look at international finance. Central banks are diversifying their dollar reserves faster than at any point in decades. Regional payment systems are expanding. Bilateral trade agreements increasingly bypass dollar-denominated transactions. Consider development finance. New institutions are emerging that operate outside traditional Western-led frameworks. These aren't anti-American institutions. They're simply non-American institutions. Trade relationships are evolving, too. Supply chains that once ran through American influence networks are being redesigned to reduce single points of failure. This is rational behavior. When any system becomes perceived as unpredictable or politically weaponized, users start building backup plans. What makes this shift especially important is that it changes how countries think about the future, not just the present. Foreign policy decisions are often judged by immediate outcomes, but nations plan in decades, not news cycles. When trust in a system weakens, even slightly, governments begin preparing for scenarios where that system may no longer be reliable. Over time, these preparations stop being theoretical. They become policy, they become infrastructure, and once that happens, returning to the old status quo becomes extremely difficult. The problem for America is that these backup plans don't disappear when the immediate crisis passes. This is where the real strategic cost begins to emerge. Once countries invest time, political capital, and resources into building alternatives, those alternatives start shaping decisions on their own. Leaders begin asking different questions. Not how do we work within the existing system, but how do we avoid being vulnerable to it? Over time, this mindset quietly reshapes foreign policy priorities. Economic agreements are designed with redundancy in mind. Financial systems are built to function even when access is restricted. Trade relationships are evaluated not just for efficiency, but for political insulation. This doesn't happen overnight. It happens gradually, almost invisibly. But when enough countries reach this point, the global system itself starts to look different. Not because anyone declared a new order, but because the old one stopped being trusted as a default. Once Brazil and China establish direct currency arrangements, those arrangements create their own momentum. Once India develops alternative payment mechanisms with Russia, those mechanisms become permanent infrastructure. Once African nations build continental financial systems, those systems generate their own networks and efficiencies. We're not watching countries reject American leadership out of spite. We're watching them engineer resilience against American unpredictability. This trend cannot be easily reversed because trust rebuilds slowly, but institutions, once created, develop staying power. Every parallel system constructed reduces American centrality by small but permanent increments. Every alternative relationship that proves workable creates a precedent for future alternatives. The ultimate irony is clear. The more we've used our systematic advantages to project power, the more we've motivated others to reduce our systematic advantages. This isn't the dramatic collapse of American influence that some predict. It's something more subtle and potentially more lasting. The world is quietly building the infrastructure for a future where American power still matters but is no longer essential.